revelation.
Yeah. What's happening, everybody? Looks like we're live. All right, welcome to the podcast, everybody. Again, I am trying my best to stream through Rumble Studio. And it's not really working out too well, unfortunately. Thanks for joining me today. It is October 8th, Wednesday. Last night, my friend Perry and I had an episode of Tuesdays with Perry, episode 124. You should check that out, where we talked about all things on the waterfront, Gaza, Portland, Chicago, and a lot more. It seems like I do have a stream going, so we're going to work with that right now. So before I get into any further ado, again, I'm trying to work through this Rumble Studio thing. It worked, it didn't work, it got stalled. And so we're starting 20 minutes late, but I appreciate you joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. Let's get right into the news for today. So Perry and I talked about this briefly yesterday. Pam Bondi eviscerates the Democrats during a judicial oversight hearing, particularly focused on the Biden administration's weaponization of the Justice Department. So they talked about that. And she tore down not only my state, my senator, my U.S. Senator, Dick Blumenthal, but also others, including Adam Schiff. So she went after the Democrats with abandon during this committee oversight hearing. And breaking news today is Joe Biden advised the CIA to bury unfavorable intelligence about Hunter's corrupt connections in Ukraine. And of course, the liberals keep fanning the flames of political violence. I talked about this briefly, but now it's finally made it into the news. Now is Hollywood putting out this new movie, One Battle After Another. So we'll talk about that as well. So let's get into the headlines for today, October 8th. We're going to start with the UK Express. Russia mocks Donald Trump's America. Civil war is coming. In U.S., the Russian lawmaker said we should take advantage of their existing differences. Of course they do. Their intelligence operatives do. And so does Communist China. Of course, all our adversaries are fanning the flames of this divisiveness within America. We should drive them not only into an economic shutdown, but a political one, which it seems has indeed happened. All right, so next we're going to go to Politico, the intelligence mockingbird outlet, Politico, the website. Trump open to invoking the Insurrection Act. The comments came one day after a federal judge blocked the president from sending National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon. But they are in Illinois, and we're going to get to that in just a second. So the Insurrection Act is applicable in this. And the reason being is Democrat politicians in Democrat-led states are telling their citizenry and their police forces to obstruct lawful law enforcement being conducted by ICE and the FBI. So this obstruction amounts to insurrection. It's the same thing that happened in the Civil War. There's insurrection first and then plans for secession. And I talked about this previously when the movie first premiered. This movie with Leo DiCaprio, One Battle After Another. Hollywood Reporter says conservatives take aim at One Battle After Another, year's most irresponsible movie. While Paul Thomas Anderson's film is being heralded as a masterpiece by many, some conservatives can accuse it of potentially inspiring left-wing violence. It is the follow-up to Civil War. That's all it is. If you saw Civil War, it's pure propaganda. This also, if you looked at the last movie Leo DiCaprio was in, was another global warming propaganda piece. And this is just the same. So you can take a look at this picture of Leo DiCaprio with a sniper rifle and what looks like some sort of detonator or explosive device in his other hand. I mean, it could be a phone, could be anything. But the point is, we just had a political assassination from a sniper. So, and if you look at the movie, it glorifies left-wing political violence, and it takes aim at not only the current administration, but the militarization of the efforts to remove over 20 million illegal aliens. You gotta excuse me, I'm a little rusty. We'll go back to the story, though. Given the film is also intensely political, which is, the timing of this couldn't be worse, telling the tale of a burned-out revolutionary, leftist revolutionary, Leo DiCaprio, who endeavors to save his daughter, which is, it's the only redeeming part of the plot. If you take that away, you know, and the thing is also because it's a child, the child is POC, and so he's trying to save his daughter from a white nationalist military officer, of course, Sean Penn. So you put white nationalism on the military that are trying to deport millions of illegal immigrants. So it makes it racist. So you don't understand the layers of propaganda here that appeal to people's conscious and subconscious points of view, you could say, or your biases. It's perhaps surprising that there hasn't been more noise so far from those on the right. The film opens with a celebratory raid on an ICE facility to free detainees and shows government agents coldly executing unarmed suspects and sending an undercover agent into a peaceful protest to throw a Molotov cocktail to justify increased force. There it is in a nutshell. Got Molotov cocktails, you got ICE, you got executing unarmed civilians, you got white nationalist army officers. You have everything in there. So to think, and especially because it's with Leo DiCaprio, which is known, well known for, and Sean Penn, of course, for participating in propaganda films, volunteering to play in propaganda films. This isn't surprising at all. I brought this up when the film first debuted, and then several weeks later, we had Alex Jones hopping on the bandwagon, and now others obviously hopping on the bandwagon. The release of this movie is completely poor timing. A week after Charlie Kirk was assassinated by a sniper, you have the lead character running around with a sniper rifle. Let's move on with the news, though. USA Today, liar, failed lawyer, Attorney General Pam Bondi insults Democrats in Senate hearing. Bondi accused Democrats of slander against President Donald Trump. Senator Dick Durbin complained about her refusal to answer the most basic questions because it was a show for Democrats. They wanted to try to drag her through the mud. That wasn't going to happen. And that's why Trump picked the department heads which he picked, is because, as I mentioned the other day, is that they don't shy away from controversy, and in interviews, they tend to come out on top each and every time. So when she was talking about liar and a failed lawyer, she was referring, of course, to Adam Schiff. Pam Bondi accuses Senator Blumenthal, he's the senator from my state, of lying about military service during a heated hearing. Bondi fired back after the Connecticut Democrat questioned her about former law firm's lobbying activities and was questioning her ethics. And that's when she turned around and said, how could you, when you claim that you served in combat when you actually didn't? Dick Blumenthal served in the military, but stateside, but often said he served in Vietnam, which he didn't. Served during Vietnam, not in Vietnam. So again, another victory for the Trump administration. Dick Durbin said she couldn't even answer the most basic questions. She has nothing to answer for. Right? This Judiciary Oversight Committee, what was looking into the state of the FBI and the Department of Justice, particularly in the Biden administration, and what they found out so far. But the Democrats kept trying to make it about what's happening now on the streets, which is all, it's all perfectly legal. Let's go. And the problem is, of course, the Biden administration wasn't concerned in focusing on crime. Post-Millennial has the headline, drag queen booted from Phoenix Pride Parade after arrest for statutory rape of a 13-year-old boy. Michael Browder, 35, told the police he believed the 13-year-old was 18 or 19. The room was incredibly dark, so he couldn't really see. First of all, they were communicating online to arrange for sex. But since the 13-year-old boy was a willing participant, it's statutory rape. However, sexual deviants don't really care. They care about getting caught, and they can just deny. Denial of the law is no defense. And so, even though the 13-year-old was a willing participant, this is a 35-year-old man, 20 years older than this kid, and of course, it's a kid. It doesn't have the right of consent sexually. But we've had so much grooming going on that why this is not surprising that young children, young teenagers, are seeking out sex with older males online. 13 years old. Shouldn't even be sexually active. And not only that, but is soliciting sex online from somebody that was 20 years his senior. All right, going back to the the question at hand here, the Washington Times has the headline, National Guard arrives in Illinois as Trump pursues crime crackdown. Governor says deployment signals march towards autocracy. And this is Pritzker. I mean, he's just talking shit. It's not. The reason is because Trump said, if your law enforcement help us, right, keep back the protesters, really aren't protesters, they're obstructors, the citizenry that has been called to obstruct the efforts of ICE, if you don't help us with these people that are breaking the law, obstructing federal officers, that we're going to have to bring in the National Guard to keep them back. And the National Guard, apparently the National Guard do have powers of arrest, unlike federal immigration officers don't have general powers for arrest, which means they can't arrest people for just showing up and obstructing them. They can only arrest people that are illegal immigrants. One illegal immigrant, according to the Post-Millennial, to serve only 1 year in prison for a fatal hit-and-run killing of a college student. In April, Fernandez Cruz was making a left turn when he pulled out in front of Baker's motorcycle, striking him. Baker died from his injuries. So, and then he fled the scene, and fleeing the scene is what's going to get you in trouble. It's not the fact that you got into an accident that resulted in somebody's death. You're obviously responsible to some degree, but now you ran away. Why? Because you're a legal immigrant. And just like other people that die because of the actions of illegal immigrants, they're not supposed to be here. So if this person never entered the country, this person might still be alive. And this dovetails nicely with this other post-millennial article. Judge releases Chicago suspects charged with ramming cars into federal agents. This comes as there is a push from the Trump administration to crack down on crime and illegal immigration in Chicago. They rammed cars into federal agents. They should stay in danger. They should stay in jail if, and this has always been the constant refrain, if somebody's willing to harm law enforcement, they're more of a danger to the public. That has also always been the refrain from law enforcement. Story goes on to say Judge Heather McShane ordered both Miramar Martinez and Anthony Ruiz to be released on Monday ahead of their trial. It doesn't say whether or not there was bail or anything. They were just released. The two cases have been joined together. However, they're driving separate cars on Saturday when both of them allegedly rammed their cars into federal agents. Martinez was shot by federal agents during the incident. Martinez and Ruiz allegedly, followed the agents for 20 minutes in their vehicles before the incident took place. Sean Hennessy, the assistant U.S. attorney, said Martinez had a loaded gun in her car at the time of the shooting. During the court appearance, defense attorney argued that Martinez had a legal permit to carry the weapon per the Chicago Sun-Times, but she was involved in assault with a deadly weapon, which is a motor vehicle. She was, first of all, she's trying to obstruct the operations of law enforcement. So there you go. And motor vehicle assault. The FBI has said that there were other drivers who were in other vehicles that rammed the federal agents and are still at large and offered $50,000 for those, leading to other suspects' arrest. Shouldn't be out of jail, shouldn't be allowed to do this with the full extent of the law. That should be coming down on these folks. Again, from the Post-Millennial, Portland anti-ICE militant charged with assault on federal agent could face 8 years in prison if convicted. Thank you. Harin and Zuludawa Irvin, 29, of Gervais, Portland, had been accused of throwing a large object at a federal officer, striking the officer in the chest with force while trespassing on federal property. Like I said, they need to have and I'm not a big I mean, I guess I'm pro-police. But, you know, I have an understanding of people, but you can't, this goes beyond the pale. It's not like, hey, somebody's driving down the street, they were pulled over for no reason and searched for no reason without a warrant, hassled, assaulted, whatever, by police officers. This is not, has anything to do with it. These are people that are assaulting federal agents. They make it sound like, oh, yeah, well, they were just standing there and, you know, they were protesting. Yet protesting doesn't include ramming your motor vehicle into federal agents or throwing objects at federal agents. It's both assault. You're assaulting a police officer, like I said previously. The common refrain from police has always been, you're more of a risk to the general public if you're willing to attack a police officer. So, sticking with the ICE thread here, this is from the Federalist. Senator Dick Durbin spreads cartoonishly false hoax about ICE agents tying up children. This is it in its entirety. In the middle of the night, federal agents pulled women and children out of their beds, crashed down the doors to their homes. In that order. So crashed down the doors to their homes, destroyed their apartments, zip-tied children and others, and detained immigrants and U.S. citizens alike for hours in vans. When one witness complained about the treatment of the small children, an agent laughed at her and said, fuck kids, fuck them kids. Apparently that never happened. She made it up. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker gave a dramatic description of the same story during a Monday press conference and been repeating it every chance he gets. But Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Tricia McLaughlin, posted the children were never zip-tied. Shameful and disgusting lie. Of course it is. Whenever Democrats and other media push emotionally laden hoaxes involving children, it's worth remembering that young people are considered minors, kids, or children until 18. Politicians and other defense attorneys like to use the words like kids to conjure a mental picture of frightened toddlers. But 17-year-old gangbangers are kids too, so the mention of children must be evaluated critically. And they keep using this picture, which Bill Malusian cites, is this claim is starting to spread, but is completely fake and isn't even ICE. It's a police officer arresting his own son as a joke. So this is associated with what we heard about, but it's not real. Fake news. Again, from the post-millennial, John Oliver gleefully celebrates attack vandalism of ICE agents in Rochester, New York. Perfect. Well done to everyone involved. Of course, I don't know why a late night comedian is cheering on the obstruction of law enforcement agents. Residents of Rochester confronted immigration agents who attempted to detain illegal immigrants who were working construction on a home in the area. When late night talk show host John Oliver heard about it, he cheered. The law enforcement agents were bullied, their vehicles damaged, but Oliver was a fan of the unruly crowd that got in the way of the agents carrying out federal law. It's fucking obstruction. He went on to say, in Rochester last month, ICE cornered some men working on a roof and were waiting for them to come down to arrest them, but a local pastor went on social media and summoned people to protest. It's the same thing that you have from the Arab Spring. They use social media to get people out in the streets. The Arab Spring was just color revolution template anyway. Another headline from the Federalist: Democrats who pretend DOJ weaponization didn't happen under Biden get schooled by Senator Hawley. Their timing could not have been more disingenuous. It came during a hearing Tuesday And this is the hearing with Pam Bondi. Less than 24 hours after the clear evidence that former President Joe Biden, Autopen, this is his new moniker, used the FBI to spy on Republicans. Documents show the FBI obtained cell phone records of 8 Republican senators and a U.S. House of Representative from January 4th to January 8th, 2021. As part of the Arctic Frost investigation, Arctic Frost eventually became special counsel Jack Smith's electoral lawfare case against Trump. Hawley went on to say, I just wrote it down because I want to be sure I heard it correctly. Hawley said, I've heard them say that Joe Biden never targeted his political enemies. Joe Biden never directed his attorney general to target his political opponents. Huh? That's interesting because I could have sworn that yesterday we learned that the FBI tapped my phone. Hawley went on to say, gee, it looks like targeting political opponents to me, and yet I haven't heard a word from that side of the dais about any concerns whatsoever. We've got nothing but concerns today, but no concern at all for the Justice Department that is tapping the phones of sitting United States senators because who knows why. They don't like them. They're members of the opposition party. They're Republicans. They're conservatives. And apparently they were being investigated to see if they were connected to some sort of conspiracy on January 6th, and there was none. There was no conspiracy on January 6th. Sorry to say. They wanted there to be one. It's the same thing with Trump. They wanted there to be some sort of nefarious activity being done by Trump because everybody's doing something illegal, but Trump really wasn't. So they had to make shit up. So whether or not they were planning to make shit up on these senators, believe you me, if Kamala Harris got elected, they would have carried through with January 6th as long as they could. And this is related to this next article from Just the News. Republicans see FBI's Arctic Frost investigation as a plot to chill Trump's political comeback. Newly declassified revelations related to the FBI's Arctic Frost investigation chronicled the 2022 lawfare assault against then former President Donald Trump and the MAGA world as criminal inquiries, which would lead to criminal charges, spun into high gear as Trump leaned toward running for president again. We know this. The new revelation that the FBI snooped on the phone records of Republican members of Congress during its January 6th investigation, which brings us to greater scrutiny of the whole fucking thing, is that they were just digging for shit. Just like they dug against Donald Trump. If they didn't find something in their digging, they would make shit up. Story goes on to say the FBI official Timothy Thibault, we all know this name by now, whom Republicans argue showed extreme anti-Trump bias, demonstrated a willingness to target Trump early on in his first term, attempted to slow walk or block the FBI's investigation into Hunter Biden, and in April 2022, helped spark the investigation dubbed Arctic Frost, later carried out by Smith, which led to criminal charges against Trump related to the Capitol riot. Trump and other Republicans repeatedly alleged that Smith and the FBI were themselves engaging in election influence. Of course they were. And the thought here is, the reason it was called Arctic Frost was to chill any momentum conservatives had. So just in the name there, they were looking not to investigate real crime, but to chill the hot Republicans that still had momentum, and particularly had momentum because of Joe Biden, and also particularly because the Democrat candidate for president, Kamala Harris, can't string two words together. Next headline from BJ Media, a new Biden scandal just blew wide open. And I was talking about this in the open. What we have here is the text from the story saying that newly declassified CIA documents and emails reveal a troubling picture of then Vice President Joe Biden handled intelligence about his family's dealing in Ukraine. The evidence suggests that Biden wasn't just managing political optics abroad, he also interfered with the flow of intelligence at home in what officials now describe as a rare and unusual behavior. At specific request of then Vice President Joe Biden, the CIA buried an embarrassing intelligence report detailing the poor view the Ukrainian government took of his diplomatic efforts and business dealings of his own family in the country. So basically, the Ukrainians were saying, we called Joe for help, and all he did is install his son on the board of Burisma so they could, corruptly take money out of Ukraine. Story goes on to say in an email sent to the CIA in February 10, 2016, an individual in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence wrote, I just spoke with the VP, NSA, and he would strongly prefer the report not, quote, not be disseminated. A reference to Biden and Colin Kahl, who served as National Security Advisor. Oh, NSA was not NSA. National Security Advisor, thanks for understanding, concluded an individual responsible for delivering the president's daily brief, a summary of the intelligence and analysts presented to the Oval Office each morning. Big breaking news. Okay, well, we know Biden was corrupt, and we know things have been corrupt. And I was originally going to put in the headline that the deep state has been exhumed because we're really finding out how the politics of power works. And it's not done fairly. And we're going to find out why they believe this is because good guys do not, the true to the adage, good guys finish last. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Next article up is just the news. Pennsylvania Governor Shapiro calls Virginia AG candidate Jay Jones' texts reprehensible and excusable, but fails to ask him to withdraw from the election. Next article up. From the Federalist, how many of 300,000 Virginia early voters want to change their minds on Jay Jones but can't? So if you don't know what this is all about, roughly 300,000 people had voted in early voting in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So let's say half of those people were voting for Jay Jones. Well, now if they know what has been reported, maybe they want their vote to come back. So in any case, that if he steps down, Democrats will lose hundreds of thousands of votes, likely. So that's one of the strategies being employed. That's why they won't let him they're not backing him to step down because people have already voted for this guy. So we reported on this already. This is National Review. Molotov cocktail arrest at the Red Mass, another ominous sign. What specifically are they talking about? They're talking about this guy, Louis Jerry, 41 from Arizona and New Jersey, was in a tent outside the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle on October 5th, where they hold a Red Mass. What is a Red Mass? Well, the Red Mass is a mass they have beginning in honor of the start of the Supreme Court, the beginning of the Supreme Court. Post Millennial has the headline, man arrested outside D.C. church had 200 explosives and a manifesto targeting Catholics, ICE, Supreme Court, and Jews. So it's a... ICE, Catholic, Supreme Court, and Jews. That's quite a list. The manifesto revealed the significant animosity towards the Catholic Church, members of the Jewish faith, members of SCOTUS, ICE, and ICE facilities. Going to the story, Louis Jerry, 41, of Arizona and New Jersey, was detained Sunday in the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle. On October 5th, held its annual Red Mass, where a prayer is said that the High Court will perform well in its new term. The service is historically tended by the justices. When police were attempting to clear the area ahead of the event, Jerry was in a tent at the steps of the church where he told the authorities, "You might want to stay back and call the federales. I have explosives." When police tried to remove him, the suspect replied, "Several of your people are going to die from one of these." He then gave several sheets of paper and a manifesto called Written Negotiations for the Avoidance of Destruction of Property via Detonation of Explosives. Wow. More headlines from Just the News. FBI summer heat operation includes snagging over 8,000 most wanted fugitives and gang members. You know, I got to go back to this article just for a second here. All right. This guy is a fucking lunatic. And he is just the product of years of demonization and blame. People of faith, bigoted views of people, generalized views of people, and including the Supreme Court and ICE, that has been put on by the liberals time and time again. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. This isn't organic. It's synthetic. These people are driven to hate by rhetoric coming from the left. All right, in any case, Just the News summer heat FBI operation includes snagging over 8,000 most wanted fugitive and gang members. 10 FBI officers prioritize finding dangerous fugitives, leading to more than 750 arrests, including more than 30 wanted for murder. Key arrests in California, Massachusetts, and Texas netted dangerous fugitives on the FBI most wanted list, including violent gang members and Mexican drug traffickers. Fox News has the headline, Comey to be arraigned in federal court after being indicted for alleged false statements obstruction. Comey is charged with making false statements, obstructing a congressional investigation related to the Trump-Russia probe. Yeah, I don't know if he'll be convicted, but the Democrats, everybody that is in the deep state or against Trump, has been obstructing federal proceedings and the elections, politics, law enforcement, everything. All they do is obstruct because there's no way to win. So all they do is try to slow or stay the process. And James Comey has to go to jail. Next headline up from Just the News. Senate confirms more than 100 Trump appointees amid government shutdown. Well, that's a victory, clear victory. Keep it going. Fox News, Trump administration announces fewest border apprehensions since 1970. There were 237,565 apprehensions in fiscal year 2025 so far, compared to 201,780 in fiscal year 1970. When all of the people of different political persuasions believed that illegal border crossing was not good for the country. It isn't. And here's another breaking news story. This is from the New York Times. Supreme Court seems skeptical of Colorado's conversion therapy ban. The court ruling in the Colorado case will have the implications in more than 20 other states with similar laws. Now, the way the New York Times frames it is a Supreme Court. This is a article by Ann Marimow. The Supreme Court's conservative majority, okay, they're already framing it, a conservative majority on Tuesday seemed poised to rule for a Christian therapist who says her free speech rights have been violated by Colorado law, banning mental health professionals from seeking to change a minor's sexual orientation or gender identity. It's called conversion therapy. And it's not really focused so much on LGBT, lesbian and gay men and women, as much as it is trans people. And this is the thought process behind it. The lively argument lasted about 90 minutes. The justices debated whether the so-called conversion therapy covered by Colorado's law causes harm to minors. It really doesn't. And this gets into our next article here from the Federalist. Blatant viewpoint discrimination, says Sam Alito, who slams Colorado for telling therapists they can't affirm kids' natural sex. And the point being is that if you can affirm kids' a child's thought of being a different gender, then why can't you affirm the natural gender? The moment came during oral arguments in Chiles versus Salazar, a case focused on legal challenge brought by the Colorado resident Kaylee Childs, a licensed therapist who provided counseling to children struggling with issues related to sexual orientation and gender dysphoria. Why would they have those problems? Childs alleges that the Centennial State's conversion therapy law infringes upon her First Amendment right for free speech by inhibiting the types of discussions she has with minor clients. She goes on to say, Alito goes on to say, viewpoint discrimination. His questioning exposed the state's policy of permitting therapists to encourage a child's homosexual, transgenderism-related behaviors, while at the same time prohibiting therapists from offering counseling that could help child overcome those transgender behaviors. And you know they're being brainwashed is the point. It's the same thing that applies to the violence. Also applies to transgenderism. You have this steady drumbeat from people on the left and progressives saying, you're the gender you think you are, when you could just be mentally ill. I often say, if someone claims they're Napoleon Bonaparte, does that mean they are? No, of course they're not. And I don't blame the individuals per se, because they're living in a sea of toxic chemicals, which a lot of times are endocrine disruptors, so they might feel more like a woman than they would have 30, 40 years ago, just because of what they're ingesting. But it's the same. That point is the same point with violence. It's the steady drumbeat of you can act this way, you should act this way, you're compelled to act this way. That's the problem. Is you're not leaving people's conclusions in context to the individual. You're allowing groups to bombard individuals via the internet and other media, which is a case of propaganda, which gets people to believe things that they hear from their peers and over the internet. All right, some more good news, because we're sick and tired of this constant having to battle the left, and then they look at you like two heads, you know? It's like, stop telling people to commit political violence or go out on the street and disrupt law enforcement. Stop telling them to do that. Stop telling kids they could be whatever gender they want to be. Stop telling kids to start considering sexual inclination when they're not even in puberty yet. Right. New York Post, Elise Stefanik, who is a New York representative, just 5 points behind deeply vulnerable Kathy Hochul in New York governor's race. Internal poll shows. Well, this is sort of great news because I like Elise Stefanik. I think she would be a great governor. I wish Lee Zeldin would have ended up as governor of New York, but he is doing great things at the EPA. And so I hope Lee Zeldin got really, really close, and that grotesque mask of a woman, Kathy Hochul, needs to be removed. She's insane. She's completely insane. During COVID, she was wearing that vaccine necklace. Insane. She's an insane person. You can just see it in her face. She needs to go back under that rock she crawled out from under. Couple headlines left. Charlie Kirk leaked text confirms he was livid about bullying Jewish donors. I'm leaving the pro-Israel cause. The only reason I bring this up is because the leaked text apparently leaked to Candace Owens, and Candace is all about the Jews killed Charlie Kirk. And although there's a possibility that Mossad was involved in one way or another, look, we know Russia and China intelligence are involved in splitting this country by being pushing divisive views and supporting divisive views, supporting, obviously people out in the street and that sort of thing, causing our own color revolution. The more chaos they sow in America, because if you're not in a country, if you're not politically cohesive, which we once were, despite our differences on spending, there's an opportunity to infiltrate and undermine the military readiness of the country in any case. So is the Mossad interested in undermining the United States? Maybe. Would they be behind the transgender cult assassinating Charlie Kirk? Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to show me evidence. This kind of thing is all because of the Jews. I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it's always because of these people. I just think that's lazy. It's a lazy, intellectually lazy cop-out. So I talked a little bit about this yesterday. This is The Guardian, an opinion piece. Barry Weiss is a weird and worrisome choice as a top editor for CBS News magazine. CBS News. It's just magazine. But the whole news outfit that includes television and any other publication CBS has. And I said this yesterday, I don't think she's qualified to be editor-in-chief at CBS News. So why are they doing this? Well, she goes on to say, given her lack of experience in news, placing Weiss at or near the helm of a television news division makes no sense. Of course it doesn't. Weiss is staunch Zionist, and this doesn't make sense. Why? What does her views on Israel have anything to do with how she's going to cover the news? Weiss is a staunch Zionist and fierce opponent of supposed wokeness and diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. That's probably more of the point. Famously left the New York Times op-ed section claiming that she had been bullied by her colleagues for her beliefs. Right, she was more moderate. She started a Substack newsletter and eventually founded the wildly successful website Free Press. Excuse me. Yeah, hold on one second. Hey, so sorry about that. My camera batteries are dying and everything. I'm not even getting a feed here, so hopefully it's going through. So I don't think Barry Weiss is qualified for the job, but that doesn't matter. The reason CBS is doing this is not because Trump bullied them into. It's they see the changing tide of the way people look at news. And if they want to shed that moniker of being leftist media, Weiss is a moderate. She looks at things objectively like all journalists should, and I think that's the key point. Now, the thing is, she's not really qualified, so I think what their plan is to put her in there as sort of a stopgap while Trump is in, right? And then, when the pendulum swings back the other way, they'll get somebody else in there. So I don't think, I don't know what kind of deal they struck with her. I know she got like $150 million for her website, the Free Press. So CBS owns that now. So they're trying to diversify into the moderate mainstream, and in that sense, fairly conservative. And believe you me, the Free Press is not really that conservative. So I said I wanted to talk about this, so I will. The UK Times, it's the London Times, really. It's just the Times now. Forget the rom-com. Scientists say nice guys do finish last. Being agreeable works against men looking for love, a study suggests. Well, they talk about romantic relationships, but what I wanted to say here is if you do not employ cunning, which is seen a lot of times as cunning receives a derogatory moniker as well, or label, a derogatory label. Cunning isn't necessarily bad. The thing is, you have to think ahead of how you're going to do things, and you don't always telegraph or tell people what you're going to do. And so in that case, the malleable, nice, open guy who says everything that's on his mind, communicates his emotions, whatever, that won't always work for you romantically or any other way. Is that it's okay to be kind, to be, I would rather say, considerate and understanding is the best way to be. Or overstanding, even better. To be wise, be considerate. But just to lay your dick on the chopping block for anybody to take a swipe at it, and being open emotionally only to get hurt, I don't think that's the right thing to do. My brother-in-law exemplifies this. He's a good guy, but he doesn't think of terms, or he doesn't hone his killer instinct, being able to act when needed. He always defers, and I don't like confrontation, and kicks the can down the road, when a lot of times timing when you act sometimes is essential to success. So, and a lot of times I never used to be confrontational when I was younger. Hated it. But I learned when you get older, if you don't confront your issues and time it correctly, you have to seize the moment, so to speak. If you don't do that, regardless of how people feel about it, you're going to be on the losing end of the stick. All right, and a couple headlines in the financial realm. Gold rally point to eroding faith in central banks worldwide. Gold rally points to, eroding faith in central banks worldwide. It's not that. People are worried about what's going to happen. In Japan and in the U.S., a new leader wants the central bank to make government debt more bearable, which could feed inflation. That doesn't even make sense. We don't want inflation, but we don't want government debt either. The gold rally, if you didn't know, gold hit $4,000. And in 2019, when COVID hit, I was in the friggin' gold store and I should have bought more. Oh, it was at 1,600. Fucking idiot. That's what I mean. You got to be decisive and act no matter what somebody thinks. I did buy a lot of silver at the time. I only bought a little gold. I should have bought way more. I had budgeted for way more. Anyway, so the gold rally what it points to is people's worry about things collapsing. And more economic news. Zero ahead. Chip equipment makers slide after U.S. House panel. Explosive report reveals allied firms bolstered China's chip industry. What? American, Dutch, and Japanese semiconductor equipment firms have bolstered China's chip-making capacity, including through sales to Chinese state-owned and military-linked entities. Really? People are giving up. They're giving it up to the socialist dream, which is coming. Chinese-style socialism, Maoism, worldwide. You know, there's going to be a kind of corporate fascist thing on top where the corporations can deal with each other, and then under that is going to be broad socialism for the citizens of the world. ASML and other semiconductor equipment makers, including Tokyo Electron Ltd., Applied Materials Incorporated, KLA Corp., and Lam Research Corp., made sizable returns selling equipment to Chinese state-owned and military-linked companies, according to the Select Committee on China. There it is. So if you didn't think that the corporations were interested in funding Maoist socialist takeover of the globe, New World Order, with this Chinese-style communism on the bottom that we'll all have to go by, it's a socialist technocracy where we're all going to have a social credit score, etc. And that's going to rule your life. And if you don't do what the government says, they're